Yo, what is going on, everyone? It's your host, Freddie, back with another episode of the Day and Night Show. This is episode 12. You know, every single time I hop on this podcast, I feel like I have to say, I cannot believe we're at a certain episode, but I cannot believe we're at episode 12. I started this podcast journey back in beginning of April, and I'm really glad that we made it this far and we'll continue to. So let's start off this podcast with some updates. Generally speaking, one, we're out in Chicago, and I think that Chicago vibe, that Chicago centricity is going to come out, especially in season 2. But before we even get there, we need to talk about season 1. Season 1, we have 3 episodes left, and I'm so excited to give you the guests that we have coming up. One of them is a former Navy SEAL. That's going to be fantastic. And this Navy SEAL is now creative. It's just a wild transformation. We have such a cool conversation about it. And the second one is a girl who amassed a following on Twitch in her very niche area. So that one's really exciting as well. And I'm not going to say too much about episode 15, but we're wrapping up season 1. And I guess that goes into what I see season 2 becoming. And I think in season 1, we focus largely on people that are in the social media space, pursuing their passion online, whether that's, through Twitch, through being a creative, things along that nature. I think in season 2, we want to shift more into the core essence of why I named this podcast, from the Capturing Form podcast to the Day and Night Show. In particular, one, the Day and Night Show, as opposed to podcast, we have a more video component, and we're going to be bringing that more to life. And 2, I want to focus a little bit more on people that are pursuing their passion, pursuing their craft. Those that are doing it around the clock. And it doesn't necessarily have to be creatives, but we want to have entrepreneurs on here. We want to have people that are pursuing online businesses, just untraditional models that haven't prior existed. We want to bring that into the forefront. But we're still going to keep elements of folks that are creating, because that is my personal passion and what I hope to continue to grow in. So that's how I view the Day and Night Show. And you might be asking, why day and night? There's so many other names out there, and Capturing Form, kind of cool. Maybe I don't understand, but the Day and Night Show, it's supposed to be for those building day and night, those that are pursuing their thing 24/7, for those that is almost embedded in their daily routine, their DNA. That's why it's the Day and Night Show. We got some cool updates coming for that. And yeah, I'm just super excited to kick off. Major news alert. In January, we'll be having a new space for the podcast. And that's right. That means a place where we can actually record in-person episodes for those that can arrive. And I'm just super stoked to be building this out. I feel like this is something that has been in the works for a while. And the right time, the right opportunity, the right price all came up. And, I'm going to say this. It's not the craziest thing ever, but it is my place. And so for the Day and Night Show, you'll be seeing more episodes recorded there. But for now, we're just at La Casa and whatnot. So steering away from the updates, today's topics in the solo episodes. I spent a while thinking about what I wanted to talk about, but I think since the last time I had a solo episode, which was episode 7 or 8, I feel like a lot has transpired. And one of them is the fact that I've been creating a lot more on the short form media side. So Reels, TikTok, Shorts. So I want to discuss some of my takeaways from that. And then I wanted to go into why I feel like it's so important to become great or elite at the craft that you're pursuing. So for me in this case, it'd be photography, videography, really bringing that across into how I want to shape my own personal brand. And I guess a little bit of I don't know if that's self-improvement or career improvement or all of it. It's kind of bunched in, but we're going to sprinkle that in there. So one, let's dive right into this concept of virality. And on Instagram, I actually had no idea what virality would mean. And I had my first dose of it actually when I posted a video that was just about me in the Willis Tower, and there's some color grading, a nice cinematic moment. And I remember going to bed that night, just clicked upload, goodbye, put it down. The next day I woke up, it had 17,000 views. And coming from someone who prior hand probably was averaging 1,000 or maybe at most 2,000, that was huge. And I don't know exactly why it was that video. Perhaps it was the hook. Perhaps it was the fact that it was really quick, trending sound. But I started to notice these few elements come into play. And I was like, hey, why don't I make another video? And I posted this video about meeting this creator named Sky Kim in Chicago. And an element that I had seen so many times that I wanted to start incorporating in my own videos was this idea of storytelling. I think in marketing, they've gone over this. It's like they've gone through so many different ways of selling things, but the one way to truly sell something is to be yourself and to have a story. So I feel like that's what I'm coming across as I'm trying to build my personal brand. What sort of things do I need to incorporate? And storytelling was one of them. And so I went and I met Sky at this shooting venue. We were shooting a music video for this hip hop artist. And while there, I just started to conceptualize what the vlog would be. And then as the day went on and as I got back, I started incorporating bits and pieces of how I wanted the beginning of the story or the hook to amount into the actual part. So did a voiceover for that, grabbed the necessary pieces of content I needed, formulated it, and then posted it. And I remember within maybe like 10 minutes of posting, the video just started going crazy. And over the course of 2 hours, I mean, it went up to 100,000 views. And that was the first video ever that I had that has ever broken six figures. And I think, to be honest, that is the only one that has broken that number. So that video, I think, kicked off why I started honing down so hard on the short form platforms, because it's a lot easier to get exposure. But I'm going to talk about why that isn't as much of a value as I thought it would. But essentially, after that, I just started posting maybe 3 to 4, sometimes even as high as 6 times a week on these short form platforms. And I tried everything that I think I was interested in, some vlog style, some impromptu photo shoots. If you see my social media platforms, you've probably seen me post some of them. I really enjoy them. You get to meet random people, shoot their photos, and then send the photos to them after while having some content to post that people find entertaining. And I realized as I started amassing views, getting videos with 50,000, 60,000 views, the dark side of being creator started to come out within me, where I started checking these platforms incessantly after I posted. Additionally, how much I wanted to post was deemed off getting as much numbers as I could, and the vehicles of the content that I was using. So one vehicle was these impromptu photo shoots that seemed to be doing really well. To keep doing those because that was what would get me views, get me numbers, help me grow this platform. And don't get me wrong, I love photography. I love it, and that's a craft that I want to get better in. But I realized maybe I need to start reeling it back. As I started diving into more and more about why I'm creating the content, the type of brand that I'm looking to build, I started wondering, is this vehicle the right choice for me? And by statistics wise, yes, it was, because people seem to enjoy it. I think I got a relatively good amount of reviews back saying we want more of this. But I don't really know if that's the brand that I'm trying to build as someone who just shoots photos of people on the street. And as I'm still deciding, maybe it's something I can keep doing, but as a smaller component of what I'm trying to do. But in terms of like the day and night show, this podcast is all about developing you as a creator, as an entrepreneur, as someone who wants to pursue their passion or pursue what they're good at. And for me, I strip away elements of that. I want to do the same thing on my own personal channels. I want to teach people that pursuing things that you want to pursue is okay, that sometimes in life you need to take a risk, that in this life, why not reach your full potential through XXX methods? I think that's more of the brand that I'm trying to shift towards. And for me, I can do that through photography, videography. But virality, it can be so dangerous. Because of that, it puts you in this tunnel vision that gets narrower and narrower and narrower. And we've talked about on a few episodes, episode 5 with Stanley, who went viral a bunch during his Project 50 run. You just have to be really cognizant of why you're creating the content, and regardless if it does good or not, that you're satisfied with it, and just know that the views, the likes, the followers will eventually come if you upload consistently content that you're proud of in your niche. So that's where I see it. Virality can be dangerous. It can also be really good. It was the first time I ever got exposure like that, and I think confirmed to me that, yeah, I can do this. Just don't fall into that trap, that rabbit hole of, man, I need to produce this type of content, or I need to be doing this because this is what gets me immediate short-term results. When in reality, I mean, I'm 22. If you're watching this, you're likely younger too. We have a lot of time to grow and expand our vision. So that's really exciting. So I guess that's the first topic I wanted to touch on. Some of my own personal reflections that do with virality. Wow. Water also hits different when your throat is parched. But yeah, diving into this next concept that ties into this first one. Becoming so good that they can't ignore you, good to great. There's a spectrum of skill sets from bad to elite. This idea that if you're so good, they cannot ignore you. And that's how I view photography, videography, in all honesty. Like, when you think of who's the best photographer, videographer out there, I mean, everyone will likely mention Peter McKinnon. I mean, this guy is so good at his craft, understands Premiere Pro, After Effects, his cameras to a T. I mean, this is someone that just knows the ins and outs of everything that they do. They're so smart, so good at their craft that they can't be denied. I mean, when anyone thinks of this type of content, the most popular guy is probably Peter McKinnon. He does well for himself. And I think if you're a creative entrepreneur, you're looking to build something, think of how can you become so good that they can't ignore you. Jim Collins, good to great. I mean, you might already be good, but how can you take that next step? And something I've personally realized is when you're scrunched for time, learning seems to be put on the backbone or the back end. Because I work a job. I work a job to sustain myself as I work to pursue these avenues. So I come home and it's like 6, 7 o'clock, and I'm debating how can I spend my time. I feel like I put learning to the back end. Instead, I'm focusing on creating. And you can do that and you can learn from it. But there's only so much you can learn because you need the added perspective of what else is out there. So you can keep increasing your skill set, your knowledge, and just know that there is much more to learn. So as I'm diving into like Final Cut Pro, DaVinci Resolve, more and more into manual photography, composition, and then, of course, afterwards, the editing process. There's a lot of things I didn't even realize you could do. And as I take more time to now create less and learn more, I'm realizing this is probably the direction I need to head towards. Keep learning. And then once I feel like I've learned enough new things, all right, now time to put it into practice. Like, for example, I was diving into DaVinci Resolve. For those of you that don't know, it's a program by Blackmagic that is for video editing. Really, I would say a complex software, but once you learn it, incredibly rewarding. One of the best color grading softwares out there. Really good for, I guess, bringing the energy back to video editing and, of course, giving an eye to things that aren't as fleshed out in these other programs. And as I'm diving into it, I'm realizing, wow, there's so many things that I learned in Final Cut that I need to either relearn again for DaVinci Resolve, and there's so many new things that it can do because of Fusion, which is like the visual effects platform. I think the audio platform on DaVinci Resolve is a little bit more thorough, so more to learn there. But all in all, as I'm going through this, there's just so much to keep learning. And of course, as I'm doing it, I'm realizing, wow, I'm still relatively like either very novice, intermediate, or still honestly a beginner as I keep doing this. So, I mean, we're coming up on 11 months into this, but around 3 or 4 months of pursuing this relatively intensely. And it gets me excited. It gets me excited knowing that I haven't anywhere near reached my peak, that there's so much to learn, but that even where I'm at now, I'm able to create and produce results if necessary. That's a cool feeling. And if you're an entrepreneur out there, if you're a creative, keep learning. Obviously, I feel like it's a little different if you're an entrepreneur because you need to be doing as well. But if you're a creative, take some time to really learn, especially as you dive more into these crafts. And the last thing that I actually wanted to talk about, less about this idea of becoming a creative or pursuing your passion, things like that, is I want to talk about this idea of creative. I don't want to call it depression, but for the sake of this talk, we'll call it depression. Creative depression. And for me, that's the idea of, oh my gosh, like not being able to create for days on end or not being able to think of things to create. And it drives me insane. Sometimes I'm thinking of this video concept, how to execute it, And sometimes it's little barriers like, oh, maybe I don't have the right equipment to do this. Or it's other things like, I don't have the time right now to get to it. And I realize that really does put me in a slump when I'm not able to create or at least be involved in it in some sort of fashion. I find myself falling into a little bit of a lull, not as satisfied with my own day-to-day life. And it hits. In fact, I would even go as far as to say it hits quite differently when you want to do something, but you cannot. But I guess that's life, right? But as someone who's looking to keep growing in their skill sets and whatnot, it's so important. It doesn't matter what's going on every day, that you carve out time. So for me, it's always 1 to 2 hours to work on something that I would think would be beneficial. So either working on this podcast, learning something about my camera that I didn't know priorhand, working on these editing softwares, or shooting something. I need some sort of creation every single day to make sure the juices are flowing and that I don't lose the magic, I guess. So I don't know if anyone else out there is feeling that way, but I definitely am. And I'm looking to find fixes for it. But I feel like that's why I've been in a little bit of a rut with the podcast, is because I've been focusing so much on these other things. I've been so far distant. Now that I'm returning, I'm like, man, like I could have done so much with this. And the episodes for the rest of the first season are all already recorded. And so at this point, it's just putting them out. But for season 2, it's taking the time, vision cast, envision how you see things from the 1, 3, 5, 10-year mark, and how you can make incremental steps towards that every single day, every single week, and whatnot. So to make sure you're not in that lull, in that creative depression, always looking to get better, essentially. And I mean, right now we're recording this on a Shure MV7 microphone. We have my Sony A7C Sigma 2470 DG Art lens, and my MacBook Pro is taking the audio. But it's going to keep getting better. I think as more focus is placed on this, I mean, I got this studio space just to improve this podcast and see where I could take it. I want to make it such a more integral part of my creative life. And I think even, as a creative, as an entrepreneur, always look to gain new skill sets and push things through. Doing a podcast is incredibly fun. It's incredibly rewarding. Growing it is pretty difficult. Something you have to stay consistent with. But I love the fact that these avenues, I'm learning much more than I've ever have before. I'm doing so much more than I ever have before. And perhaps the most important factor is I'm enjoying the process. And you need to enjoy that process. You need to enjoy that journey. Otherwise, you are going to fall not just into a creative depression, but a straight up depression. Because you're not achieving the things that you thought you could achieve in the time frame. So always keep in mind, the journey is the most important part of the process. And that is some of my thoughts coming into the end of season 1, my own journey with creativity, this idea of virality and falling into that trap of posting just to post, not posting from the heart, from what really matters. And I think you're going to see a change in that. You're going to see things that I think speak not only to me, but perhaps to you, that aren't posted just to be posted, that are posted with a lot of love and attention placed into them. So I'm really excited. But I think it's time to become elite. It's going to take some time. It's probably going to take, honestly, like a few years. But I hope that by the time I'm 25, the execution is seamless and whatnot. And for you out there that wants to know exactly how you can learn to scale your own thing, really think of every single day, how can you devote some time to it? How can you learn something new? And then, of course, like throughout the week, what can you actually do to implement the things that you learn so that you keep getting better at it? Whether that's a musician and you're learning how to use Logic, you're learning how to produce, or you're learning how to write lyrics, photographer, videographer, going shooting, editing, whatever it is. Keep that in mind and always ensure that you have like this 5-year vision lined out. Don't go for like a 1 week or 1 month vision. Go 5 years. Because just like Bill Gates said, people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in like 5. So just keep that in mind as you keep venturing forward. Last updates of the day and night show. I mean, I'm super stoked to show you guys this space. But next week, amazing episode with the Navy SEAL. I'm not going to reveal too much about him, but his journey is incredible. How he's gotten to where he is incredible. And I think the conversation that we have is thought-provoking and also pretty exciting. So stay tuned for that. And Anything else? Honestly, that's about it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm so excited to show you guys what's coming up next. And this is your host, Freddie, again. Stay tuned for another episode of the Day and Night Show in 1.5 weeks. All right, everyone. Take care. Be safe this winter. And looking forward to dropping the next episode. Keep building day and night. Peace.